Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you 12 tips on how you can be a better parent. And I want to start with this video by saying I'm not a parenting expert, nor do I ever wish to be a parenting expert, but I am a mum of 3 who really enjoys consuming content about parenting. So I like to read books, read articles, watch TED Talks about parenting, and I like to follow experts on Instagram. And the best thing about that for me is that I can take in what I like and what I think can apply to my family, and then I can just leave the things that I don't like and don't agree with. But all of the tips that I'm going to share with you today are like little nuggets that I've taken in and thought that's actually really interesting and useful, because parenting is hard, and it's actually never been harder to be a parent than right now. There's a great TED Talk, which I'll link below, which discusses that. They say that we've actually never spent more time with our kids than we do now. Like even in the 60s, and when everyone was pretty much a housewife, they spent less time with their kids than we do now. And dads spend more time with their kids than ever as well. But now most homes have 2 parents that work, and there is a huge amount of pressure to have your children doing every extracurricular activity as well. So it's actually never been harder to be a parent than now. And that was even before lockdown. So all the tips I'm going to share with you might just give you a bit of food for thought. And the good news is they're all really simple, they're all really easy, and it really is the little things that mean a lot. So I hope you enjoy this video. If you do, give it a big like, and please share your comments and thoughts below, and I'll get into it. So my first tip to be a better parent is to avoid labeling your children. And when I read this, it really hit home because I think this is something that I've done in the past, and it's also something I think I grew up with. But don't beat yourself up if you do this, because it's really common, and it's often a direct comparison between siblings. So you might talk about your children and say, he's really academic, he's really creative, or whatever it is. But by labeling them, it might discourage their other siblings from trying new things. So if one of your children owns the athletic title, it might discourage their siblings from trying sports because they might just fear that they're not going to be as good as the athlete that's already in the family. So I thought that was really interesting. And, if you label one child the picky eater, they might take on that role and be like, well, I'm not going to try new things because I'm the picky eater. Or even if you're talking about their likes and their dislikes, you can try and use different language. So I used to joke that Caleb was my wild child. I'll never do that again. You can say energetic instead. If a child is very shy, you can say they're a bit careful. You can kind of soften it so it's not a full-on label. My next tip is to trust your gut. And I know I've said this so many times on this channel before, but it's a real thing. You have natural inbuilt parenting instincts. You have a sixth sense, so you should trust it. If something doesn't feel right, if it doesn't feel good, go with your gut. So there's so much information out there, and it can be really overwhelming, but at the end of the day, nobody knows your child as well as you do, and if it doesn't feel good, you need to trust your gut. There's actually so much science out there about this, and I personally haven't read enough about it, but maybe some of you guys have. But apparently when we were primates and we were apes, we actually had 2 brains and one was in our stomach. So apparently it's a real thing, so you need to trust it. My next tip to be a better parent is to remember that your children are always learning from you, so to model good behavior. Our children are not just learning from us when we sit down and do homework with them. They are taking us in like a little sponge 24/7. So they're always watching how we are treating our partner, how we speak to restaurant staff, how we handle arguments, and more. And most of us realize this when our children blurt out a word or a saying that is something we say all the time. It might be a swear word, or it might just be something that you often say, and then you're like, oh, they're really listening to everything that I do. So just being mindful of that, not engaging in gossip, trying to be a bit greener, not saying bad things about yourself, not saying, oh, I feel so fat today, or talking about calories all the time. Just little things like that can be really important because they listen and they take in absolutely everything. But one YouTube video that I did watch said that, you know, obviously this is kind of terrifying because we're only human and we do make mistakes. But if we do make a mistake, we can just own up to it and apologize. Or you could speak to your child about, oh, sorry, I got upset. I didn't really handle that very well and I'm really sorry. You can almost just teach them in that way when you do mess up. And another cool thing to do, well, I thought it was cool, was he said sometimes if you talk to your child about something, they might not listen to you. But say, for instance, if I was to say to my husband one evening, oh, today I found a necklace on the ground and I thought, oh, I could keep this for myself, but I knew that the right thing to do was to hand it into the police station. If you almost say it to someone else, but they overhear it, sometimes they really take that in and it can be a lesson. So I found that quite interesting. But yes, just remember, they're always watching. My next tip is to let your children make mistakes. Nobody is perfect, but we learn so much from our mistakes. And I've read so much about how your child experiencing disappointment is actually a good thing. But it's really hard for us, but we are too quick to intervene nowadays. Everything's so instant as well. Like when I went to school, we didn't have mobile phones, but I'm sure kids nowadays in senior school have a mobile. If someone's mean to them, they could text their parents could call the school, and it like spirals out of control. Whereas it might actually be good for them to experience it and handle it on their own. I read this one article by a head teacher, and it was heartbreaking really. It said that almost every child is going to experience some form of bullying, but rather than taking over, you almost just want to show that you're supporting them and helping them, instead of like just getting involved, because they need to learn from mistakes and they need to learn how to handle situations like that. But I don't really like this one. My next tip is that your time and attention is truly the greatest gift that you can give your children. And I think we all know that deep down, but when life is so busy and so hectic, it can be really difficult to even give them like 15 minutes of undivided attention because life is so crazy. And I love to buy my kids toys, and I know sometimes those toys are bought through guilt. Like I bought them a playhouse outside exactly when I went back to work. So it's so obvious, but really all they want is our time and attention. So even 10 to 15 minutes a day with them, talking to them, or maybe when you pick them up from school, you don't just go on your phone, you ask them questions about their day and really engage with them. And often when your child is really playing up, it's because they're desperate for your attention. So maybe instead of disciplining them, you could think, right, they really need my attention, so I'm going to give them 15 minutes of undivided attention. And even now that my eldest son, he's a bit old for me to read stories to him, he reads little novels himself, so we might just talk for 10 to 15 minutes. Or the other day, the boys were having their screen time, and normally when they have screen time, that is when I get stuff done around the house. But Fraser said to me, "Mummy, do you want to play Roblox?" And I was like, okay. So I played Roblox with them, and honestly, it's like something that they're interested in, and they were so excited that I actually took the time to play with them. Like Matt even came into the room, he was like, "It's so loud in here," because they were just literally so excited. My next tip is to let your children be bored and to let them do nothing. Now, I'm sure we've all mastered this after lockdown. They've actually had to be bored, but it's really good for them. Often when children are bored, they get really creative, and they also show us what they're truly interested in. It also builds up a sense of discovery and curiosity. And for my children, I've really seen them bonding together when they're not allowed on their screens and they just have to play with what we have. They get super creative together. They will build dens, they'll make games, like they were playing the piggy game in the house the other day, and they get on really well. So don't feel bad. It's actually good for them to be bored. My next tip is to pay attention to your own well-being and self-care. It is way too easy to neglect yourself and always put yourself last, but this always makes me think of an airplane safety briefing. You know, they always say to put on your own oxygen mask before you help anyone else with an oxygen mask, because what good are we if we don't have oxygen? We can't help anyone. So same thing for motherhood. Try and make time for a hobby or time to relax and unwind. I know it has been so hard in lockdown. Personally, I am so exhausted because we've had the kids all day and then I tried to make up for work at night. So it's been really full on, but it's important that you find some time. I personally find that like doing a little workout is a great way to have some guilt-free me time. And also on that note, trying to make time for you and your partner to connect. Again, I know that's been really hard in lockdown, but it's super important. And if you are ever struggling, there is so much help out there and so many support groups as well. My next tip is super simple, and that is to make warm memories with your children by having little rituals or traditions. I read one article that said that our kids probably won't remember the things that we say or what we do day to day. So while routines are great, what they'll really remember are little like traditions that we do, like game night or movie night, or the fact that you let them have chocolate toast on a Saturday. Just little things like that can give them some really lovely memories. My next tip is to listen to your children and to teach them gratitude. So you can do this by asking your children questions every day. So rather than talking to them all the time, you want to be talking with them and you want them to answer questions. This can be tricky because when I pick up my kids from school, for instance, if I was to ask them about their day right then and there, they'd probably say, they did nothing. But then by the end of the day, sometimes at bedtime, they tend to like open up more. They're probably trying to avoid bedtime, but they really start talking, and I'll ask them questions like, what was the best thing that you did today? What was the worst thing that happened today? A real way to get my kids talking actually is to say, who got in trouble today? They love to like tell you all about that. And then that kind of like opens up like the communication lines. And I also on this read something that said for every one criticism or correction that you give your children, you want to give them 5 compliments or affirmations of things that they do well. And this really got me thinking, because sometimes you end up just being like, no, stop all the time. But you might not necessarily just say, oh, you're so good at Lego. Like you're always, you build such good towers, or, you're so good at art. Like you might just skip the compliments, but it's actually really important. This one article I read said that positive affirmations and like compliments are like little like light feathers, but negatives are like cement. So you want to have a ratio of like 1 to 5 good things. My next tip is really simple and one that you probably know already, and that is that children need sleep. There's so much research out there about children's sleep, and I was surprised that when I looked up how much sleep my 3-year-old needs, it was not actually that much less than what a newborn needs. Our little ones are growing so much that it is actually so important, but it's also the one thing they don't want to do. But if I can just read this to you, studies have shown that kids who regularly get adequate amounts of sleep have improved attention, behaviour, learning, memory, overall mental health and physical health. Not getting enough sleep can also lead to high blood pressure, obesity and even depression. So it's really important. But with my boys, when they don't want to go to sleep, I always say, but when you sleep, you grow. And that seems to work. So yeah, just, making sure that they have good routines. I'm sure they do anyway. But when your child, like my 9-year-old, he tries to fight me on bedtime and stuff. But it's actually so important. So it's something that you should stick to if you can. My next tip is one that I've talked a lot about on this channel, and that is don't compare. Now this starts from such a young age. As soon as you have a baby and you go to a play group, you start comparing your baby to others that are a similar age, whether they're sitting up or crawling or talking or walking. You're always comparing. And I just wanted to say that baby milestones are not deadlines and not to worry about it too much. Obviously, if you have any real concerns, you should go and see your doctor, but your child is unique, so try to let them be their own little person. And my last tip is to reflect on your own childhood and your own experiences. If there's anything in parenting that makes you really emotional or really stressed out, think about why that might be. And if it is because of your own experiences as a child, for instance, if you find mealtime really stressful, maybe they were really stressful when you were a kid and you're almost like doing the same. Like how many times have you said something and it's literally something your mum used to say? And I also follow a doctor, Dr. Shivali on Instagram. She talks a lot about conscious parenting, and it's really interesting. And sometimes she says that you might have something broken inside you and you're almost trying to like fix that through your children, and it's obviously not healthy. So I'll put links to that as well if you want to find out more. But that is it for this video. Those are all of my 12 tips. I hope you found these interesting and you liked this style of video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye guys.